Hello, beautiful people. I'm Chris Maddox, founder of the Wild Woman Project, and I'm speaking to you today because we always meet like this at new moon time, and the new moon is upon us. It arrives on June 28, 2022. So we've been in this process since last fall of every single new moon taking a poem from a wild woman poet and drawing from it inspiration and new perspective. So when I say wild woman poet, I mean a woman who, in her own right, in her own particular way, as we all do in our own particular way, embodies the wild woman archetype. And we are in for a treat this new moon in June. It's our first new moon of the summer. If you are in the Northern Hemisphere, it's our first new moon of the winter. If you are in the Southern Hemisphere. This poem today is from the great and mighty, tender, dreamy, erotic, imaginative Anaïs Nin. And she was a treasure, and we are blessed to have so much of her work. You know, she was born in the early part of the last century in 1903. She passed in 1977. She was born just outside of Paris, lived in the United States in New York City. Think she went back to Paris. Then I think she lived in California in her last years. She is known for her being such a committed diarist. So she kept a diary since girlhood, and a lot of her diaries are actually published. She also was a poet. She was a writer of erotica. And she was just a very influential voice in the early days of feminism. And she has so much to say and so much to share, and was really focused on the personal. You can tell by the years that she lived in, 1903 to 1977, in Europe and the States. Think of historically all of the things that were transpiring during that time that were of political, global um, import. And she really believed and spoke often about the importance of focusing on the personal. That when you go deep into the wellspring of your own life, your own relationships, your own relationship with the world around you, and you go really, really as deep as you possibly can into those areas, that they will take you through the political. They sort of transcend all of that. And she encouraged people to not waste their time with the political hypocrisies of the moment, but to focus intently on what was prescient, what was right in front of them. And that's one person's perspective. And you can take it in. And I think every time we have the opportunity to dance with a poet, that is to read her words, to take in her perspective, it's as though we are sitting in circle with others in the great family of humanity. And just like any great family or any family at all, you're going to have varying perspectives. And it behooves us to sit still and breathe and listen to one another. Um, so we are sitting still this new moon and breathing and turning our hearts and our minds to what Anaïs Nin had to say. This poem is brief. You'll find it right below this video on our site. I'm going to read it to you once, and then we'll kind of wander back through it and see what we find. It's called Risk. And then the day came when the risk to remain tight in a bud was more painful than the risk it took to blossom. So she starts us with this, and then the day came, starting with an and like it's a continuation. You get the sense like this is not a hard beginning of something. We're in the middle of an unfolding story, and you could argue that all of nature, there's no hard and fast beginning. It is an ever cycling, unfolding story. Could not possibly point to the very beginning of anything. Um, so to think of that in our own inner lives, and then the day came. We're in the middle of a story, as though almost like it was inevitable. And then the day came. You get the sense maybe that the poet was anticipating this, maybe not. Maybe it just, she woke up one day, she's like, this, something's got to give kind of thing. The day came. And then she brings to mind two risks. When the risk to remain tight in a bud was more painful than the risk it took to blossom. So there she points to one of nature's great teachers, flowers. Emerson said, God laughs in flowers. There's something so beautiful about flowers, offering color, offering food for the bees and pollen to pollinate with, and in the herbalist tradition, offering so much plant medicine. So she's saying the day came when the table kind of turned, when one risk suddenly outweighed the other. So the risk to remain tight in a bud was more painful than a risk it took to blossom. So you got the sense before that she could hang with whatever discomfort of being tight in a bud. Maybe she was like, and I can live in this bud. This bud's nice. This bud's sweet. It's comfortable in here. It's safe in here. And then the moment comes, like any growth process, where she needed to spread out. She needed to open, and to continue to be tight in the bud was painful, much more painful than, whatever courage, whatever daring, whatever unknown she must face as she blossoms. So there's something in there about how pain can guide us a little bit. That pain, what was once safe and comfortable, after a time can become painful when it is time to blossom. If the flower doesn't blossom, the flower will die. It has to blossom. It's part of the process. So we can think about this and relate to what she might have been thinking about, when we look back at our own life. We can perhaps recall a time where a change was needed, a growth was needed. And it was a risk either way. It was a risk to stay and a risk to go, a risk to be as you are and a risk to grow. But we've all had a moment where we've decided to take the risk to blossom. And there's a lot of information in that experience for us. What did it take? What did that look like? When was that? And you can kind of go back through your memories, the wellspring of your own life experience can be a greater teacher than anything that you could ever read in any text. How many times have you faced that moment where you're going to change, where you need to change, where if you stay like it is, it's going to hurt? So you dare, so you open, so you go. So that might be a journaling exercise on this new moon. You could light a candle. You could maybe sit outside if you're able, or sit by the window if not, and ponder, look back. Have you had this experience? And in this moment, the new moon, June 28th, 2022, is there an area of your life where this phenomenon is occurring? Where perhaps you have been tight in a bud, and perhaps you still are, but perhaps it's coming uncomfortable or painful, and deep down there's a need to grow, to open, to blossom, to take the risk, to open yourself to whatever life is going to bring you next. So think on that. What's that life area? Could be anything. It could be something in your relationship world. It could be something in your work world, in your spiritual journey, your evolution as a person, your education, etc., etc., etc. Can be anything. But perhaps bring some attention to it this new moon and read this poem to yourself over and over. And this is one of those like sort of little nugget poems that you could actually memorize if you wanted to, and make a practice of repeating as you feel called, as needed, almost like a prayer. So I'd love to hear from you in the comments. How does this poem land? How is the pondering landing? Is there an area of your life where you're feeling that call to blossom? So whatever you feel called to share, much as little, it's always great to hear from you. I know for me, I'm a gatherer by calling or vocation. And for obvious reasons, these last couple of years, it's been really, it's not been a good idea to do that. And I feel with our very first, here at the Wild Woman Project, we're having our very first live retreat in the middle of August, under August full moon, the 10th through the 14th, near my home in the Blue Ridge Mountains. And I so feel this poem is resonating exactly. I cannot wait to show up with my feet on the earth and to see my sisters who I haven't seen in a really long time, and to do what we do together, to ritual and to play and to pray and to cry and to cackle and to dance and to gather around the fire and to blossom, to take the risk to blossom. So I know many of you are signed up for Through the Roots. I'll see you there. If you're not, we'll put a link below. There is a prerequisite for this particular retreat as we, ease our way back in. This is a smaller retreat, open to graduates of our Circle Leader Training program, women who have joined us in the last couple of years for our winter immersion, and women who have been with us for Wild Woman Fest. We've had Wild Woman Fest over 6 years, from 2014 to 2019. So if you are in that group and you want to join us, I hope that you will. I'm really holding this poem prayerfully. So that's my share. I'd love to hear what your share is. And if you would love to gather around this new moon, I almost had a water bottle go down. If you'd like to gather this new moon, We have circle facilitators, graduates of our circle leader training program all over the world. Some of them are even facilitating online. So you can find 2 links below this video, one for online circles and one for, to look up your country, your city, and see if there is a circle going near you. And, if the call to gather in circle and to learn to perhaps hold space for women to gather under the moon and explore the wild woman archetype deeper. We have fall training coming. So that'll be in fall later on this year. So you can look at the link below this video. You can check out the program and hear from other women who have been through it and sign up for email updates if you are interested. We'll have more information about the fall session coming soon with scholarship opportunity information and just general details. So you can find all of these links below this video. Thank you so much for listening today. I want to read this poem one more time for you. You can read along with me. And then the day came when the risk to remain tight in a bud was more painful than the risk it took to blossom.